The story starts at an airport where a group of large men dressed in fancy clothes disembark from their flight and go through immigration. The immigration officers ask them about the purpose of their visit, and one of the men says they are there for a vacation. They are granted permission and allowed to proceed. The scene then switches to a blurry shot of a civil gathering, and then to a woman in a bar who convinces the large man to drink more until he is taken away in a suspicious white van. Later, the man is shown sitting shirtless on a bench, and a little girl accidentally rolls her ball towards him. He kindly returns the ball, but the girl is scared and runs away. Unfortunately, he ends up with the ball. The scene cuts to another man on a plane with some other passengers, and the CGI of the plane looks terrible. The story jumps around to different places, including a cop lecturing a supposed delinquent who is actually a cop himself. The story returns to the big guy who is now playing with a little girl and her ball. They have a good time together, and the girl falls asleep in his arms. The big guy, Mr. Barney Emerald, returns the girl to her mother and then approaches the delinquent-looking cop. He explains that he was robbed the previous night and has no money or place to go. The cop gives him money for a bus, and the little girl says goodbye to Mr. Emerald. He takes a motorcycle ride and is dropped off at an information center near a beach. However, it's closed due to renovations, and he doesn't even have shoes. The story then cuts to two gentlemen leaving a plane and going to a bar. Trouble comes when a kid runs away from some ragged-looking people, and they search the food court for him. Mr. Emerald is trying to help, but there is a language barrier. The little girl is begging for help, but the ruffians beat up Mr. Emerald. However, the little girl's sister, Dakia, comes to the rescue and beats up the thugs using Mr. Emerald's size to her advantage. They make a getaway, and Mr. Emerald apologizes to the thugs. Dasha is curious about how the trouble started, but her sister blames Mr. Emerald and accuses him of being the source of the problem. Dasha's sister, who is a seashell vendor, secretly started the fight because she stole one of the hooligans' wallets. Despite Mr. Emerald being roughed up, he asks if the sisters are okay and even returns the seashell necklaces to them. Mr. Emerald introduces himself as Barney, and we learn his first name. Later, we see a kid at a rural home getting scared by some ghost story comics. He sees a large silhouette in the distance and thinks it's a ghost, but it turns out to be Barney. Barney, Captain, and Dacia were caught by their father causing trouble. However, the father was kind and helped Barney get his passport and allowed him to stay. They bid goodnight to each other, and Barney stayed at the temple to sleep. The next day, the sisters brought Barney some new shoes, and he joined the monks for their meals and prayers. While helping the monks with errands, Barney struggled to take off his slippers, and the sisters brought him some fitting shoes. Later, Barney accidentally caused destruction at a store and felt apologetic since he couldn't control his power. Catton suggested that he needs a job to pay off his debt, and Fight Club was the only option available. Meanwhile, the Camellia Diamond was placed in a secure vault. Barney received martial arts training from Dacia and had a hard time at first, but he eventually got the hang of it. When asked about how he ended up in Thailand, he mentioned winning a lucky draw prize but got robbed on the first night. Barney's sparring with a kid to test his skills when the Camellia Diamonds are stolen. Three gentlemen are behind it, and only Barney's smaller diamond can open the container holding the Camellia Diamonds. They've got 3 days before their flight to Brunei, and then they get paid. For now, it's party time in the ring as the sisters ask Young if they can get Barney into this. Young accepts, and some intermission fights take place. It's just as brutal as WWE, and everyone's loudly cheering. Catton asks if Barney could survive this, and Dasher really doesn't know either. Ken comes up with a plan to feed Barney something so he can go totally nuts, and it looks like he got ringed out. The paramedics say his life has ended, but that was all the sisters' imagination. They canceled the fight, and Barney is very apologetic once again. Next plan, stripping. The crowd seems to love it, and one of the girls even rushes to spank those glutes. Barney absolutely refuses, saying he can't dance. The sisters force him to shake what his mama gave him. Canton asks if he gets his passport, would he go home? His answer is that he still needs to fix his mother's restaurant. It's a promise. He says, I keep my words. Then he spots a girl that was making him drunk, so he chases after her. Captain's close behind, and so is the cop from before. The chase is onto an apartment filled with crooks and stolen passports. They shut the door behind him and beat him to shreds. The cop comes in and asks him to turn themselves in, but they all choose the hard way. The cop starts fighting back with some amazing moves, and Barney's asking Canton to help him find his passport. Oh no, Chief, the cop's looking like he needs some help. He introduces the hoodlums to some secret spices and then takes down a bunch of them. Canton found his passport, but she doesn't tell him. Then the cop steals a gun from him. but it's empty. Too bad for him. Barney has a spear, and he opens fire on one of the guy's legs. Then we fast forward to some time after that, and Doc is asking if they found the passport, but Captain's over here lying. Canton suggests to simply ask their mother if Dasha can compete in a Muay Thai dance competition. The mother agrees, and the sisters, along with a big guy, head to the ring where a match is taking place. However, the match is rigged as Jan had been bribed by the diamond thieves who had previously stolen from them. The combatants are introduced as DACA versus a fully grown man named Rit Des, and the fight is not fair as the diamond thieves secretly slip a metal bar into Rit Des's gloves. Despite this, DACA puts up a good fight until she is eventually knocked down. With the help of her sister and some accurate attacks, DACA manages to knock Rit Des down, but the fight is declared a draw due to it being rigged. The sisters return home in shame and their mother figures out what has happened. DACA also discovers that Canton had lied to her, so she runs off. The diamond thieves are holding their entourage accountable for the missing crystal key, but they can't duplicate it or force open the laptop container as it will explode. Barney is now working in the fishing industry to earn some money, and the sisters are helping their mother rebuild their restaurant. Finally, when they manage to reopen the restaurant, customers arrive and Barney helps to make some food. But he keeps breaking the mortars due to his immense size and strength. The sisters and Barney go to the monk's temple where they are given a big and sturdy wooden mortar. The story follows Doc, who is shopping for fruits and vegetables and gets lost while trying to find a specific papaya store. She ends up at a different papaya store where the young seller gets annoyed with her for not buying any papayas. To prove that the papayas are good enough, she buys a heap of them. On her way home, she tries to take a motorcycle but is pushed over by one of the drivers, and she ends up getting into a fight with him in front of the public. The papaya vendor comes to her aid, and they end up beating up the drivers with papayas. As a thank you for her bravery, the papaya vendor advertises Doc at some Tum restaurant. Meanwhile, Barney, Kat, and Dasher are running a successful food business, and customers are coming in by the dozens. However, some man tries to woo Dasher, but Barney's presence scares him off. At the Three Thieves' place, they find out that Kat is responsible for the theft of the box and cut a deal with a man to remember her face and report it to them. On Dasha's birthday, they celebrate with candles and gifts. Barney receives clothes from her as a present. The next day, the girls are kidnapped by a white van, and Barney is forced to go along at gunpoint. The Three Thieves interrogate them and force Dasha to swallow the crystal key. They take her hostage, but she manages to escape. The remaining bad guys try to kill Captain and Barney, but Kat feeds Barney some Samtam, and he turns into the Red Hulk and fights them off. Eventually, Barney is left to face the three big men who beat him up badly. Ken tries to save him by making some Samtam nearby. Doc fights off Yang and his goon and then escapes, while Canton makes a spicy dish. They really beat up Yang, but he catches Canton's head under the floorboards. Canton turns into the red monster again, reminding them not to mess with a man who has experienced the heat of the sun. Barney takes over the fight and beats them all up. They return to DACA where Doc is still running from Yang and his goon. She knocks one off a cargo hold while Barney smashes through some walls and takes on the other goons. They tag team him, but Barney's rage prevails. Barney sees Doc being cornered and goes to help, but gets distracted by the other goons. Doc topples the last pursuer and she sees Barney fighting two people. She comes to help, but Young goes after her. Doc pushes Young and runs towards Barney. They grapple until Barney gives one of them a shock and then uses a water barrel to fight them off. One of them almost throws a barrel at Barney, but Canton tries to turn the voltage on again and fails. Barney is left to fight with a barrel, and he wins. However, Doc gets captured at gunpoint, and Barney gets shot while trying to save her. Soon, the men trade the locals, and Canton apologizes for keeping Barney's passport. She runs after her sister, but Barney finally unleashes his inner rage and throws himself into the plane. He is shot, but survives thanks to Canton's Somtum. Time passes, and they are shown to have gone on a worldwide adventure. Their restaurant is a hit, and the film ends.